Today's Mercedes-Benz interview of the day brought to you by Mercedes-Benz Dream Days. Mercedes-Benz Dream Days are here. Exceptional offers on the CLE Coupe, E-Class Sedan, C-Class Sedan, CLE Cabriolet going on now through September 3rd. Learn more, MBUSA.com/dream. His show follows ours on Peacock. Matthew Berry, Mr. Fantasy Football. You can check out Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matt. Daily show at 3 Eastern on Peacock. And rankings, waiver wire advice, where to start, who to sit, popular love-hate analysis there. You can find it all. Fantasy Life, that the multimedia content company that he hatched here. I just got this.
And available on NBCSports.com. I should say that my stuff, just to clarify, if you don't mind.
Okay.
My stuff is at NBCSports.com, at rotoworld.com, but I do own FantasyLife.com, and we have a partnership, Fantasy Life and NBC Sports does. So you can buy the Fantasy Life Plus package and get the RotoWorld Draft Guide. It's a great pack. It's honestly, it's a wonderful partnership that we've been doing with NBC.
When it comes to the exact day, the perfect day to do your draft, is there one?
The day before the season starts.
Oh, okay.
I think it depends on who you're asking, right? I think that if you were talking to quote unquote sharps, what they would tell you is, people that do what I for a living, we would say, like, we want to do it like right after the NFL draft or even before the NFL draft, because people aren't paying attention and you can get some really good values, especially if you're doing like best ball and that kind of stuff. But generally speaking, for 99% of the population, do it the night before the season starts. Like, do it next week. Do it this upcoming weekend when you have as much information before. When we've seen all the preseason games, we know the players that are injured, we know who's holding out. The more information you have, the better. I mean, think about what a draft is today versus a draft 24 hours ago on CeeDee Lamb. I was literally in a draft, and somebody was up at the 5th pick, and they had between CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and they chose Amon-Ra St. Brown, and literally 20 minutes later, the tweet comes out, oh, CeeDee Lamb, he's back in camp. He signed this massive deal. And had that draft pick happen literally a half hour later, they'd have picked CeeDee Lamb because CeeDee Lamb's my number 2 overall player. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, the more information, the better.
Christian McCaffrey, number 1?
Yes.
Not even close?
I don't know that it's not even close. Obviously, there's, he's got the soft tissue stuff that makes you a little concerned. But for me, no, just because not only is he great, but he is so much better than everyone else at the position. Like, over 100 points last year, better than everyone else. Like, 12 games of Christian McCaffrey, and I'm not suggesting that he's not going to play every game, but even on a part-time basis, Christian McCaffrey just is such a huge value week in, week out at the position.
Matthew Berry, NBC Sports Fantasy Football expert, joining us in the Man Cave. How many sure things are there?
I mean, it's sports, so not very many, right? But I think that's what your first round should be. Your first round should be, I always say this, you don't want to try to win your league in the first round, but you can lose it. Like, you in the first round, this is a superstar. This is somebody that has a very high floor that you're going to count on week in, week out. So hopefully your first round pick is a sure thing.
Give me some names.
I mean, listen, at the running back, I think there's only 3 guys, right, that I feel really good about this year as quote-unquote sure things. There's other guys that I like a lot, but Christian McCaffrey, Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson. I'll also say that I think Derrick Henry and Isaiah Pacheco have monster years this year. But I don't know that they're sure things, right?
You didn't include Saquon Barkley.
I did not.
Because?
Because there's 2 things that we just don't know how it's going to play out. Is Saquon amazingly talented? Of course he is. But now going to the Eagles, first off, when they get in close, they give it to Saquon, or is it just going to be Jalen Hurts, Tushbush, Jalen Hurts has had the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL over the last 2 years, right? And yes, they've lost Jason Kelsey, but still, like, just how many times does Jalen Hurts call his own number versus hand off to Saquon Barkley? So there's concern about touchdown equity for Barkley. And the other thing is at least traditionally, Hurts has not been a dump off to the running back kind of quarterback. He has either been, he's thrown it downfield to A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, or he's tucking and running. And so one of the big appeals of Saquon Barkley as a running back is he's such a good pass catcher out of the backfield. And that's, in New York, that's how they used him a lot. Now, listen, Philadelphia isn't stupid, and you don't sign Saquon Barkley to that kind of deal to not use him to his full ability. But does he get the passing volume that we have seen in previous years in Philadelphia? Like, he may be a better NFL running back for the Eagles than he can be a fantasy option. Look, I still have him at like running back 6. But you asked me about sure things, and I think there are, considering how high you have to draft Barkley this year, I think there are question marks that you could say, like, is he going to have the level of production that he had in New York, during the glory years? The counter argument to that is that he's playing behind the best offensive line he's ever played. And because he's on a team where he's not the entire focal point of the offense, that they're going to be able to scheme more stuff and keep him open. If you do some RPOs with Jalen Hurts, you're going to open up big lanes, and all Saquon needs is a hole, and he's gone. So,
but you win these leagues, it feels like, where later in the draft.
Yeah.
Okay, so take us later into the draft. Give us some players that, if our audience hasn't done their league yet, that they're at least aware of.
You want middle round? How deep do you want to go? How deep you want to go? Because this is one of those things. It's always just like, all right, like, what would you like to eat? I don't know. Are we at an Italian restaurant? Are we at a diner? Is it breakfast? Is it dinner? Like,
let's go semi deep.
Semi deep. I mean, I'll rattle off some late round running backs and wide receivers. Like, these are like literally like your last couple of picks.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, in no particular order. Let's see. I mean, I think I love Greg Dortch in Arizona, the human Dortch. Like, these are all going to be guys like, who are you talking about? Like, Jalen McMillan in Tampa Bay seems to have won the third job there. Josh Downs is somebody who I liked a lot in Indianapolis last year. He's a little bit banged up to start the year, but I think there's some real nice potential. I don't know when it's going to happen, Dan, this year, but at some point this year, Luke McCaffrey's going to be a thing for the Washington Commanders. So, like, these are like Darnell Mooney. No one's talking about Darnell Mooney in Atlanta. Like, they're going to be thrown a lot with Kirk Cousins. And obviously everyone's talking about, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson. But Darnell Mooney is kind of an interesting late-round flyer. I think the Buffalo guys, Khalil Shakir and Curtis Samuel, needs to get healthy. But I think those guys are some late-round wide receivers. At running back, it's a lot of I think Braylon Allen is really interesting in New York. I think I would argue the same for Ray Davis in Buffalo, Bucky Irving in Tampa Bay. In terms of some kind of late round running backs, I'm just trying to go through my list. It's one of those things. If you said a player or you said a team, I'd be like, okay, here you go.
Okay, do you ding Justin Jefferson a little bit that you have Sam Darnold throwing to him this year?
Not at all. I mean, Justin Jefferson. So last year, 4 games. Justin Jefferson played without Kirk Cousins. He averaged 22.1 fantasy points per game. He was a top 5 fantasy wide receiver, and that was with Nick Mullins and a little bit of Hall. Like, whatever we think of Sam Darnold, he's probably better than Nick Mullins. I think Justin Jefferson is going to get probably north of a 30% target share. He's all they've got. And Kevin O'Connell, it is a pass first, aggressive offense. And so if you're Sam Darnold, right? If you think about this, like this is one thing that I think gets lost in fantasy football analysis, Dan, and tell me if you agree with this premise, which is that they're human beings. So much of fantasy football analysis is like, well, this stat and this X and O and this X and O. And I'm just like, and all those things are important. Film watching and data analysis and statistics are all very important. But the other thing is they're human beings. And so I just sort of think about, like, I'm Sam Darnold, right? I go to the Jets, it's a disaster. Carolina was awful. All right, I go for a cup of coffee in San Francisco. Wow. I'm the starting quarterback of a team with legit playoff aspirations, and I've got one of the best wide receivers in football on my team. Here's my first real shot at playing for a real team and to resurrect my career. If you're Sam Darnold, what are you doing? Are you like, oh, where's Jalen Naylor, their third wide receiver? Or are you like, hey, JJ, where are you going to be? I'm trying to get you the ball. I mean, like, Sam Darnold's got an opportunity here, and I just think people don't think like that. And I'm just like, yeah, he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Justin Jefferson, for his career, averages over 90 receiving yards a game. Like, it's stupid. So I think Justin Jefferson's actually one of these safer guys. You asked me about sure things, like in terms of wide receivers, right? I think CeeDee Lamb, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think I think Tyreek Hill, assuming he stays healthy. I think Justin Jefferson.
What about Brandon Ayuk in that he's sort of in limbo? If he goes someplace, does that increase his value?
Depends where he goes, but unlikely, right? The rumor now is Pittsburgh, right? There was talk about New England, there was talk about Cleveland, there was talk about Pittsburgh, and I think if he goes to any of those situations, it's not as good as being in San Francisco, being schemed open by Kyle Shanahan. He clearly has a connection with Brock Purdy. And if you're a defensive coordinator and you're trying to figure out, like, all right, do I try to stop Kittle or McCaffrey or Debo or Ayuk? And like, that's the genius of Shanahan. And so I think wherever he goes, it would be a downgrade to his fantasy value. If he does, and that the problem is like, does he? That's the other thing is like, as you're going to drafts, there's just the uncertainty of both Ayuk and Jamar Chase. Now Jamar Chase is back at practice, and so we're hopeful that he ends up playing the season. Jamar Chase, by the way, proud Fantasy Life investor. Thank you, Jamar Chase. We love Jamar. But, you just don't know what's going to happen with that situation.
How do gambling and fantasy sports intersect? Like, where do you think we're going with this?
I think they're still very separate. I think the positives of it for the fantasy sports industry is that now there's a lot more money and interest in fantasy sports because fantasy sports players are very likely going to become sports bettors when it's legal in their state, right? Or they are, they already are. But anyway, so there's been more resources, more money, more attention paid to fantasy. That's been very helpful, in terms of my career, right? I mean, I would like to think so, but I don't know. Like, part of the reason I think that I was able to, I'm at NBC, awesome, but I'm on Football Night in America, right? I'm on a pregame show I'm on the number one pregame show. And I think a big part of that is because I do segments for DraftKings, and so the influx of revenue and money and resources into fantasy from sports betting companies has been a real positive to the industry, I think, overall. In terms of the actual gameplay, there's definitely obviously some, there's definitely some sort of games that are kind of gambling, kind of fantasy, that are sort of gray. But ultimately, I think the value proposition for fantasy versus the value proposition for sports betting are different, right? Like with fantasy, it's like we were talking before the show about your son, right? It's like you get together with your buddies and you want to talk crap to each other all week long, and it's a much more social experience. Whereas with sports betting, you're like, I'm watching the Sunday Night Football game and I want a little act, right? We've got you may not be a fan of the Chiefs or the Ravens, but you're going to be watching Thursday night, and maybe you think like, I think Mahomes kills him. Give me the over on 1.5 passing touchdowns or whatever, whatever it is. And now you've got a rooting action in something that you might not have rooted for before.
All right. So my son, knowing that you were coming on, knowing I wasn't going to give him any advice, he wants an honest review.
Okay.
Of his fantasy team here.
All right. How many teams in the league?
I think 12.
12-team league. Okay.
Okay. So Breece Hall.
Great.
Saquon.
Yep, sure. Saquon's awesome as a number 2 running back. Sure.
Brock Purdy.
Fine.
Mike Evans.
Okay.
Michael Pittman.
Okay.
George Kittle.
Great.
James Cook.
Love Cook.
Christian Kirk.
Great.
Miami Dolphins defense.
Okay, fine.
Then some of the bench, Blake Corum.
Yep.
Zamir White, Calvin Ridley, Hollywood Brown, Dante Johnson, Jacoby Myers, Dallas Goedert.
So I think he's a little, after his 2 big running backs, he's a little light on running back. I wish he had one elite wide receiver. I will say that I think Deontay Johnson is a great pick, just of all the guys you ran through. Deontay Johnson's going to be the focal point of that Panthers offense. And I think that's really interesting. I think Calvin Ridley's pretty interesting too. I think the Titans are going to be a much, much more fun team this year than people expect them to be. They're going to be more pass happy under Brian Callahan. Will Levis is going to chuck it all over the place. Like I'm honestly, I'm looking forward to the Titans this year. I think they're going to be a lot of fun. The Evans is fine. Evans is solid. He's going to be another 1,000 yards. He always is. My only concern on Pittman is just, I assume it's PPR scoring. Okay, yeah. So Pittman's kind of a PPR cheat code, but he doesn't score touchdowns a lot, and so hard to see. We don't know yet with a full year of Anthony Richardson how much looks he's going to get. I would have liked a slightly better wide receiver room for your son, but overall, that's a pretty good team.
Guillotine leagues?
Yes.
How popular?
They are getting more and more popular. So guillotine leagues, have you ever played one, Dan?
No.
Are you familiar with this concept at all? Okay. So for people who've never played it, this I think it is the greatest thing in the world. Guillotine league's very simple. You get a league together, you draft a team like normal. Everyone drafts a team. The key here is that you don't play head to head. What you do is you just start your lineup like normal. At the end of the week, the team with the lowest score in the league gets cut, chopped forever. Your season's over. And you just keep doing that until one team remains. Here's the other twist that's completely just blows your mind. All the players on the team that get cut go back into the free agent pool.
Wow.
So it's like week 6 and like Mahomes and McCaffrey are on the waiver wire. And so every week, every team has stars. And so every week there are stars on the waiver wire. I like this game so much, I bought the company. I literally own Guillotine Leagues. Fantasy Life, we bought guillotineleagues.com. And it's literally one of those, it's the old Victor Kayem. I liked it so much, I bought the company. And we've made the game free to play. And so I'm just out. I'm like in 11 different leagues of Guillotine Leagues. And the people that play it absolutely love it. Everyone that's ever tried it is just like, this is so addicting because it's one of those things. It's like, you have a bad week in normal fantasy football. You're like, all right, whatever. But then what happens is you got a guy on a bye. Somebody leaves the game early. Another one of your stars has a bad game, and suddenly you're sitting there like, if Josh Jacobs doesn't score a touchdown on Monday night, I'm dead. Like it is a sweat like you've never had, Dan. And so it's really fun. And the other cool thing is the last thing I'll just say is if you're like, I can't get a league together before the time the season starts, it doesn't matter because you're not playing head to head. You can start a league any week you want. Like all you need is one more team in the league than weeks left in the season. So with 4 weeks of the season, you could start a 5-person league. Because again, it's just all about just don't be last.
He's Matthew Berry, Fantasy Football Happy Hour, available Monday through Friday, NFL on NBC YouTube channel, Peacock, wherever you get your podcast. He's doing a lot of things. I can't mention all these things, but it's great to see you. And thanks again for stopping by.
Dan, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll come back after this Dan Patrick Show.